Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life, moments so fragile and so sacred, when you realize not every battle is yours to fight. There are people. Oh, yes. People who will drain your joy, who will speak words like poison, who will rob the atmosphere of peace the moment they enter a room. You know who they are. You've met them. Some of you live with them. Some of you work beside them. And some of you've carried their pain inside your heart for far too long. Rise above. Don't engage in toxicity. There is a sacred strength in silence. There is a deep and abiding wisdom in restraint. And in a world where noise is celebrated and retaliation is mistaken for courage, there is something profoundly powerful about refusing to descend into the chaos others bring. When a toxic person throws their words like arrows, the instinct is to defend, to respond, to strike back. But that is not strength. That is reaction. True power, real divine power, does not react to darkness. It simply shines. You see, rising above toxicity is not avoidance. It is not weakness. It is clarity. It is knowing who you are and refusing to let the fire of another burn away the truth inside your soul. There will always be people who misunderstand you, twist your words, provoke your peace. But rising above means you don't hand over your joy just because someone else lost theirs. There's a kind of toxicity that's not loud. It's subtle. It creeps in through manipulation, through guilt, through the silent treatment, through control masked as concern. And when you sense that spirit, when you feel that heaviness come into the room, you must remind yourself that you are not required to absorb it. Just because they carry poison does not mean you must drink it. Just because they are drowning in their own pain does not mean you must jump in to save them while losing yourself in the process. To rise above is to stand still while storms rage around you. It is to smile. Not out of denial, but out of the assurance that peace does not come from circumstances or people, but from a place deep within that cannot be touched by outside noise. It is not pride. It is not indifference. It is self-control rooted in spiritual clarity. When you rise above, you don't lower yourself to their standard just to be seen or heard. You stay grounded in your own truth, your own integrity, your own light. And how the toxic hate the ones who rise. Because rising above reveals their tactics for what they are. It unmasks the manipulation. It breaks the cycle. It shows them that you cannot be baited into the argument, that your peace is not negotiable. When you stop playing their game, you change the rules. When you don't respond the way they expect, their power begins to fade. Because what they feed on is your reaction. What they crave is your emotional involvement. When you rise above, you starve the dysfunction. There is a smarter way to live. And it begins when you stop looking to people for validation and start walking in your own divine confidence. Toxic people will test it. They will press every button. But if you can learn to step back, to breathe, to respond with wisdom rather than emotion, you will find that they no longer have the access they once had. You can be kind and still be firm. You can be loving and still say no. You can care and still walk away. That is what rising above looks like. It's a quiet strength. It's knowing that your soul was not made to wrestle in mud. It's knowing that your destiny is too great to waste on emotional battles that lead nowhere. Rising above is not arrogance. It is protection. It is preservation. It is choosing to live on a higher frequency, one that toxic people cannot reach unless they choose to grow themselves, and many won't. But that's not your burden to carry. Set clear emotional and spiritual boundaries. There comes a time in every life when love alone is not enough to keep you whole. You can love someone deeply and still know, with trembling conviction, that you must draw a line. Emotional and spiritual boundaries are not walls of hatred, they are fences of wisdom. They are not designed to keep people out, but to keep your soul safe within. There is no virtue in allowing yourself to be depleted for the sake of someone else's dysfunction. There is no honor in being consumed by someone else's chaos. Boundaries begin in the heart. They begin with the quiet realization that you were never created to be someone else's emotional dumping ground. You are not the answer to every problem. You are not responsible for everyone's healing. There is only one who can bear the weight of another's soul, and it is not you. When you begin to understand this, something shifts inside. You stop feeling guilty for saying no. You stop apologizing for needing space. You stop justifying your peace. There are people who will only love you when you let them cross every line. They will celebrate your yes and resent your no. They will call your boundaries selfish, cold, unloving. But what they're really saying is, I liked you better when you were easier to control. Oh, how crucial it is to discern the difference between guilt and conviction. Guilt will keep you chained to unhealthy cycles. Conviction will open your eyes to what must change. And that change begins with the courage to name your limits. What you will and will not accept. What you will give and what you will not sacrifice. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. You teach people how to treat you not through your words, but through your consistency. Every time you allow someone to overstep without consequence, you send a message that your well-being is negotiable. But every time you lovingly enforce a boundary, you remind both them and yourself that you are worth protecting. Spiritual boundaries are even more sacred. There are those who will try to manipulate your kindness by twisting your faith, by using guilt and shame to convince you that love always means staying. But real love does not ask you to betray your own soul. Real love does not demand your silence, your submission, your suffering. True spiritual strength is not measured by how much pain you can endure. It is revealed by how much truth you are willing to walk in. You can pray for someone and still protect your peace. You can believe in their healing and still step away. You can carry them in your heart without carrying their dysfunction in your daily life. These are the boundaries that heal. These are the boundaries that honor both God and yourself. For you are not here to be consumed by anyone else's fire. You are here to shine with a light that draws others to their own healing. There are relationships that thrive when boundaries are set, and there are relationships that fall away. Either way, the truth is revealed. Some people will never respect what they cannot control. But when you hold your ground, when you keep your soul intact, you show them what love really looks like. Love that honors, love that respects, love that does not violate or manipulate. This is what emotional and spiritual maturity requires. It requires that you show up for yourself the same way you've shown up for everyone else. It requires that you take the parts of you that you gave away too freely. It requires that you no longer confuse being available with being vulnerable to harm. Protect your peace at all costs. There is a stillness that is more valuable than gold, more precious than recognition, more vital than approval. That stillness is peace, the deep, abiding calm of a heart that is not at war with itself. It does not come easily. It is not given freely. It is something you must guard with vigilance, with discernment, with unwavering commitment. Because the world, in all its noise and demands and chaos, will try to steal it from you the moment you forget its worth. Peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of clarity in the midst of them. It is what allows you to sit in the middle of a storm and know that you are still anchored. It is what lets you walk through fire and not lose your soul. But peace must be chosen. It must be protected. And that means you cannot let every voice into your mind. You cannot allow every person into your space. Not everyone deserves access to your inner life. Not every situation requires your response. Not every battle is worth your energy. Protecting your peace begins with understanding that your well-being is sacred. You are not here to be tossed by every wave of emotion that someone else throws at you. You are not obligated to participate in every argument, to explain yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you, to prove your worth to those who have already made up their mind. The moment you begin defending your peace, the world will call you selfish. Let them. The voices that shout the loudest often come from those who benefited most from your silence, your compliance, your exhaustion. You have every right to pause before responding. You have every right to walk away from a conversation that robs your joy. You have every right to say no without apology. There is no reward in being available to everyone while losing yourself in the process. Peace is not found in overextension. Peace is found in alignment with your values, your boundaries, your spiritual center. And sometimes that means disappointing people who expect you to break yourself for their comfort. There will always be demands, people pulling at you, situations that try to lure you into drama, expectations that rise like mountains. But you must ask yourself, what is the cost? Is your inner world worth sacrificing just to keep outer appearances calm? Is your health, your rest, your mind worth giving away for the sake of people who will never notice what it took from you? When you begin to ask these questions, your priorities shift. You begin to choose differently. You begin to guard what truly matters. Protecting your peace also means taking inventory of what feeds your soul and what drains it. Who do you feel lighter around? What places make you breathe easier? What thoughts bring you back to center? These are the things to keep close. And just as you open the windows of your soul to let light in, you must also learn to close the doors to what brings confusion, chaos, and despair. Not because you are better than others, but because you understand the cost of living unprotected. Your peace is your compass. It will tell you when something is right. It will whisper when something is wrong. But if you are constantly distracted, overextended, or emotionally hijacked, you will miss its voice. You must create space to hear again. You must become intentional about your atmosphere, your relationships, your schedule, your inner dialogue. These things are not small. They are the architecture of your emotional and spiritual life. Peace cannot be borrowed. It must be built. It must be cultivated through rest, reflection, and boundaries, through prayer, stillness, and self-awareness, through the refusal to live in reaction to every trigger that comes your way. It is not given by others, it is kept by you. Stop trying to fix people who resist change. There is a silent exhaustion that creeps into your soul when you carry the weight of someone else's healing. When you make it your mission to mend what they will not even admit is broken. When you pour your energy, your love, your prayers into someone who is more committed to their comfort than their growth, it feels noble at first. It feels compassionate. But slowly, quietly, it begins to drain you. Because you cannot want freedom for someone more than they want it for themselves. You can show them the light, but you cannot force them to see. You can speak truth, but if their ears are closed and their heart is hardened, it will echo back without landing. There is nothing more frustrating than trying to help someone who clings to their dysfunction as if it were their identity. And yet so many people live in that space, hoping, praying, pleading for change in another while slowly abandoning their own well-being in the process. The truth is, some people don't want to be helped. They want attention, not transformation. They want comfort, not conviction. They want to stay the same while everyone around them changes to accommodate their wounds. But healing doesn't work that way. It demands honesty. It requires humility. It needs responsibility. And no matter how much love you give, how much patience you offer, you cannot do the inner work for someone else. There's a certain of grief in realizing this. A grief that comes from letting go of your image of who they could become. A grief that comes from detaching with love, from stepping back without bitterness, from surrendering the outcome. Because fixing people was never your calling. Loving them, yes. Showing grace, yes. But healing them, that is not in your hands. Trying to fix someone who resists change often turns into a cycle, a loop of hope and disappointment. They promise, you believe. They fall back, you excuse. They hurt you, you excuse. And the longer it continues, the more you begin to question your own worth. You wonder if maybe you're not doing enough, not saying it right, not strong enough to help. But that is the lie. The truth is that change is a choice. And if they are not choosing it, no amount of effort on your part will make it happen. It takes courage to stop trying. It takes strength to step back without guilt. But it is necessary. Because as long as you keep trying to fix them, they have no reason to fix themselves. As long as you keep catching them, they never have to learn how to stand. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling. Let the consequences come. Let the discomfort teach what your words never could. Let them face the mirror without you shielding their eyes. There is freedom in letting go. Not of the person, but of the illusion that you are their savior. You are never meant to carry that burden. Your compassion is not meant to be manipulated. Your love is not meant to be abused. You deserve relationships where responsibility is shared, where growth is mutual, where healing is pursued by both hearts involved. Anything less will slowly wear down your spirit and blue your vision. You cannot make someone be ready. You cannot force maturity. You cannot spark transformation in a heart that refuses to open. All you can do is honor your own journey. Keep growing, healing, keep walking in truth. And trust that if they truly want to change, they will rise to meet you on that path. Until then, you are free to let go. Not in anger, not in judgment, but in peace. Silence is often more powerful than reaction. There is a language spoken without words, and it carries more weight than 1,000 angry responses. It is the language of silence, a language the wise understand and the mature choose. In a world that urges you to speak, to clap back, to prove your point, there is immense strength in not saying anything at all. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every insult needs a defense. Not every provocation deserves your attention. Sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They feed on drama, on energy, on chaos. They know how to pull you in with their accusations, their guilt, their passive aggression. They are masters at twisting words and provoking emotions. And when you respond, especially from a place of frustration or hurt, you step into their arena. Suddenly, you're no longer in control of the situation. You're reacting to it. You've handed over your power, your peace, and sometimes even your dignity. But silence changes the entire dynamic. It refuses to play the game. It speaks from a place of groundedness. It says, I see what you're doing, but I will not participate. And that choice, that restraint, is a message louder than any words you could ever speak. It is not avoidance. It is not weakness. It is discernment. It is maturity. It is choosing to protect your energy rather than waste it on someone who only seeks to disturb it. There is a time to speak, yes, but there is also a time to be still, and knowing the difference is wisdom. When you choose silence, you give yourself space. Space to think, to breathe, to reconnect with your inner clarity. You don't say something you'll regret. You don't escalate what was meant to be diffused. You don't match their dysfunction with your own frustration. Instead, you remain anchored, grounded. A moved silence can disarm. It can confuse. It can stop a manipulative pattern in its tracks. When someone expects you to explode and you respond with nothing but calm, they are left with their own noise. And often, it is the echo of that noise that reveals the truth. Silence allows others to sit with their own behavior. It removes the distraction of your reaction and exposes the core of their actions. There is something undeniably powerful about being the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't beg, doesn't defend, doesn't engage. And yet silence is not cold. It is not detached. It is deeply intentional. It is the sacred pause between emotion and action. It is the space where wisdom forms, where clarity surfaces, where you hear the voice of your own spirit again. In the noise of conflict, that voice is easily drowned out. But in silence, it speaks loudly. It reminds you who you are. It tells you what truly matters. It leads you back to peace. Sometimes, silence is the boundary. It is how you say, "This conversation is no longer healthy." It is how you choose not to entertain manipulation. It is how you create emotional distance without needing to explain. Silence can be a gift to yourself, a moment of reclaiming what you gave away too easily in the heat of reaction. It can also be a teacher, showing you where you've been too available, too involved, too entangled in battles that were never yours to fight. Silence creates space, and in that space, healing can begin. Reflection can happen. The power of restraint can settle into your spirit like a calm over a stormy sea. And when the moment passes, you'll find that you didn't lose anything by not responding. You gained something. You gained clarity. You gained peace. You gained control. Because the one who holds their peace holds their power. And sometimes in saying nothing, you say everything. Release others without hatred. Choose wisdom. There is a grace in letting go that cannot be found in holding on. So often, we believe that releasing someone from our lives must come with anger, with bitterness, with a dramatic exit or a heavy confrontation. But there is a deeper way, a higher path. It is the path of wisdom, the choice to release without rage, to detach without destruction, to walk away with your soul intact and your heart still soft. Because when you carry hate, you carry them with you. When you carry resentment, you keep them tethered to your peace. And the very freedom you seek becomes clouded by the emotional chains you refuse to lay down. It is not easy to walk away from people you once hoped would change. It is not easy to let go of relationships you've invested in with tears, with time, with prayer. But wisdom whispers that peace is more precious than potential. And not everyone you love is meant to walk with you to where you're going. Some were lessons. Some were seasons. Some were mirrors of what you needed to confront in yourself. Holding on past the lesson becomes a burden, and wisdom teaches you when the lesson is complete. When someone continues to harm you, disrespect you, drain your spirit, and deny their impact, releasing them is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is saying, I choose to love myself enough to stop bleeding for someone who won't even acknowledge the wound. But oh, how tempting it is to wrap that release in rage, to justify the letting go with judgment, to carry the memory of what they did like armor against future pain. Yet in doing so, you don't release them. You only relocate the pain from your relationship into your identity. Wisdom says you don't need to hate to be done. You don't need to curse someone to move forward. You don't need to make them the villain because they weren't the healing you hoped for. People are flawed. People are broken. People operate from their own wounds. And while that never excuses their behavior, it reminds you that your liberation is not dependent on their punishment. Your healing is not tied to their apology. You are allowed to move on without making it dramatic. You are allowed to be free without being bitter. There is strength in quiet release, in the simple act of stepping away with dignity, in choosing not to rehash, not to retaliate, not to relive. That is wisdom. That is maturity. That is what it means to guard your spirit from becoming hardened by what others could not give you. Because the longer you stay entangled, the more you begin to reflect the very dysfunction you tried to escape. And your spirit, so tender, so powerful, deserves better than that. You can honor the good times without pretending the bad didn't happen. You can be thankful for what they brought into your life. Even if what they brought was clarity. Sometimes people enter your world to wake you up, to show your blind spots, to reveal the areas where you still need to grow. And when their role is complete, it is wisdom, not resentment, that gives you permission to let them go in peace. Releasing without hatred doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It means you've chosen not to let that hurt define you. It means you refuse to spend your precious energy rehearsing pain. It means you understand the value of your inner sanctuary, and you will not let someone else's brokenness live there rent-free. This is not weakness. It is power under control. It is choosing elevation over entanglement. It is choosing wisdom over wounds. And it is in that choice that you reclaim your story, your voice, and your future. Your energy is a currency. Spend it wisely. Every day you wake up with a limited reserve of energy, a spiritual and emotional currency that determines what you can carry, who you can pour into, what you can invest in, and how you will walk through the world. This energy is not infinite. It is precious. And just like money, if you give it away without thought, without boundaries, without discernment, you will find yourself bankrupt, spiritually depleted, emotionally drained, and mentally scattered. So you must become intentional about where your energy goes and who receives it. Not every situation is worth your investment. Not every conversation deserves your engagement. Not every person should have access to your inner life. There are those who will spend your energy freely as if it costs you nothing. They will demand your time, your attention, your emotional labor, all while giving very little in return. They will pull from you day after day and call it love. They will burden you with their chaos and call it closeness. But you must ask yourself, what is this costing me? It costs you peace when you entertain drama that has nothing to do with your destiny. It costs you clarity when you stay connected to confusion. It costs you joy when you allow negativity to sit at your table and feed on your focus. There is nothing noble in giving everything away. There is no honor in being constantly available at the expense of your own needs. Even the most generous spirit must learn to say, "This is too much." Even the most loving heart must learn to say, "Not today." A being wise with your energy means taking inventory. Who leaves you feeling lighter? Who leaves you feeling drained? What environments uplift you? What environments leave you empty? You cannot afford to keep sowing into places that only take and never return. You cannot afford to invest in people who only see your value when they need something. Your energy is not a public resource. It is a sacred reservoir meant to be guarded and stewarded with care. There are people who will not like your boundaries. They will accuse you of changing, of pulling away, of being selfish. But what they are really saying is that they were used to having unrestricted access to your strength. They were used to benefiting from your burnout. And now that you've awakened, now that you've reclaimed your energy, they feel the shift. Let them feel it. The discomfort of your boundaries is not your responsibility to ease. Your responsibility is to honor what you've been given and to stop leaking energy through guilt and obligation. When you start treating your energy like currency, everything changes. You stop spending it on worry. You stop spending it on people who won't grow. You stop spending it on explanations to those committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you begin to invest. You invest in healing. You invest in peace. You invest in purpose. You invest in relationships that nourish your soul and challenge your spirit to rise. This is wisdom. This is maturity. This is self-respect. Even good things can become too much. Even noble causes can drain you if you never pause to replenish. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you are not responsible for everyone else's thirst. Learn to discern between being helpful and being consumed. Learn to say no without guilt, and yes without resentment. Learn to rest without apologizing and retreat without feeling like you've failed. Your energy is your responsibility. No one else can steward it for you. So spend it wisely. Spend it on what aligns with your purpose. Spend it on what brings you closer to wholeness. You teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. Every time you allow something that disrespects your peace, every time you say yes when your heart screams no, every time you remain silent in the face of dishonor, you are sending a message, not only to them but to yourself. That message says, "This is acceptable, this is allowed, this is what I believe I deserve." And whether you mean to or not, you are setting the standard. You are writing the script that others will follow. You are teaching them what the limits are, or if there are any limits at all. People will push as far as you let them. Not always out of malice, but out of habit, out of entitlement, out of the simple fact that human nature often seeks the path of least resistance. And if you never resist, if you never draw the line, if you never say, "This far and no further," then the mistreatment becomes normalized. What was once shocking becomes routine. What once caused you pain now barely registers because you've learned to live with it. But tolerance is not the same as peace. Endurance is not the same as love. There is a quiet courage in setting the standard. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with clarity, with conviction, with calm, unshakable boundaries that say, "I know who I am, and I know what I will and will not allow." You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to explain yourself to be respected. What you consistently allow is louder than any words you speak. What you permit becomes your truth. And if you tolerate chaos, you cannot expect peace. If you tolerate disrespect, you cannot expect honor. You must first teach yourself how to treat you. That's where it begins. How you speak to yourself in the silence of your own thoughts. How you care for your body, your mind, your soul. How you hold space for your needs without shame. People will often mirror the way you treat yourself. If they see you honoring your rest, they will think twice before demanding your energy without cause. If they see you protecting your boundaries, they will learn that access to you is a privilege, not a right. Teaching others how to treat you isn't about being rigid or unapproachable. It's about being authentic. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you will not let anyone cheapen it. And when someone crosses the line, when someone shows you who they are through their actions, you don't need to argue. You don't need to beg for change. You simply adjust your access. You withdraw your energy. You walk away with dignity intact, because you've already decided what you will not accept. It's tempting to hope people will just understand, that they'll wake up one day and see the value you bring, the depth of your heart, the cost of your presence. But more often, people understand what you teach them. And if you've taught them that love means self-abandonment, they will keep asking you to abandon yourself. If you've taught them that forgiveness means no accountability, they will hurt you without pause. And if you've taught them that silence means consent, they will fill your life with noise. This is not about becoming hardened. It's about becoming whole. It's about refusing to build your relationships on the shaky ground of tolerance instead of truth. When you raise your standards, the right people will rise to meet them. The wrong ones will fall away. Let them. You don't need a crowd. You need alignment. You don't need applause. You need authenticity. So teach them, not just with your words, but with your choices, with your actions, with your quiet refusal to settle for less than you were created for. My friend, the wisest way to deal with toxic people is not through warfare, not through striving, not even through endless explanations, but through alignment with truth. You were never called to be anyone's savior. You were never meant to lose yourself trying to find someone else. The power lies not in controlling others, but in governing your own spirit. It lies in boundaries rooted in love, in silence that speaks louder than anger, in release without bitterness, and in walking away with your peace intact. The smartest way is not always the loudest way, not the most dramatic way, but the most sacred way. Protect your energy, guard your heart, live from a place of clarity, and never forget you are not responsible for another's healing, but you are absolutely responsible for your own. Let wisdom lead, and let real love begin with how you treat yourself.